and welcome back to another episode of the Match Ball podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host Rohan, and like always, we have a very special guest on this episode. Now, we've been to the same school. He is a senior of mine, and currently he is pursuing. So his trajectory is very interesting, and he has a very wide passion for sports. He is a chartered accountant. He's also secured a degree in ACCA, and he's now, despite the financial attachment in the beginning of his professional career, he's now pursuing masters in sports business management. It is my pleasure to welcome Abhishek Marathe from my school onto this podcast. Hi Abhishek, and thank you so much for joining me.
Given the fact that you're not prepared an introduction, that was a really flattering introduction. But yes, I think there was in school we didn't know each other much. We just knew of each other. I think we
Right,
never interacted. Whatever interactions we've had after has mostly been football,
right,
and due to CA, I think that's probably
right,
the reasons why
right.
we got in touch, and of course because of your podcast, which it's always fun to see people who are doing or have done chartered accountancy sort of step out of that stereotype and do something on the side. Hopefully, this becomes something that you can do full time as well. I'm hoping that might be something that you would enjoy. Yes, yeah, there you
I
go.
don't have a good record with saying things and manifesting in the football world, and then those things don't happen. So I don't predict anything. I just do this and hope for
Yeah.
the best and prepare for the worst. That
No,
is
yeah.
my motto. I think in
Tell
school we interacted. I think we used to have in a competition selecting the juniors for the inter-house competition, and I think that's the
Yeah,
only time we interacted. And I think you were
correct.
the head boy at one point of time in our school,
Yeah,
so that was
correct.
a very brief
Yeah,
interaction we had. But I think,
yeah,
like you said, post school, the interaction we've had is mainly sports based, and I've been reading your threads that you put out on the clubs and the analysis of financials of the of their performance annual of the annual performance. And one thing I forgot to mention in the intro is that Abhishek is a very passionate sports fan, and he likes to analyze sports from a financial point of view. So somehow he marries the two worlds that he is very passionate about. So that is also something that we will get into later, and that is kind of the theme of this episode. It's not going to be one of the "Have you seen this match? How is the reaction to that? And what do you think would happen?" and etc. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about a lot of intricacies that have happened and a lot of events that have happened in the football world over the past few years. And without further ado, let's jump into the biggest question that Abhishek might have as a Liverpool fan. So he supports Liverpool, and the biggest issue right now with him and his the supporters is Mohamed Salah's renewal and the delay done by FSG. I'll give you the floor and just take it. Just spill it out.
it's very easy to spill it out because it's usually when you see Salah playing, you really feel like, yeah, I mean, come on, you gotta give him whatever he asks for. So the straight out answer to that for me and for I think anybody who watches the game, I'm sure you would always also say that is yes, give him what he wants, whatever he wants, put it on paper, just give it to him. I think, like you said, in terms of when you look at it from the side which you and I would look like, is what's the financial implication of this? Why is there a hold up? That's where things become a little more complex. And to be fair, I don't have an opinion on this, a very strong opinion on this. And the reason why, despite being a Liverpool fan, why I don't have an opinion on this is because Liverpool has inherently, very similar to Spurs, had a very structured wage budget. They'll not go out of their way and have 500,000, 400,000 pounds per week contracts the way City and United would have. They've inherently had a very structured contract. And at the top of that pyramid of sorts, where you'd say the best players in Liverpool play, there's Van Dijk at the top, you have Thiago now coming in, and Salah at the top, so on and so forth, who are in the range of 200,000 per week, excluding bonuses. The problem is that when you break it for one player, how do you then structure it for everybody else? Because just a few months ago, just before beginning the season, Van Dijk, Fabinho, Allison, all of them have renewed their contracts. on upgrades which have not been very exorbitant. So when you say when if Salah gets a 350,000 contract, which if you look at the market is not exorbitant at all, given the fact that you have David De Gea and Paul Pogba and these players
Romelu Lukaku
earning
also. He's on
precisely
325.
Romelu Lukaku, exactly. Or yeah, I'm sure Jadon Sancho is earning higher
Right.
than Salah. So if you strictly look at what the market is willing to pay for Salah, absolutely. But in the hierarchy that's been created at Liverpool, what Van Dijk can come up to the table and say, in 2019, I was sitting next to Ronaldo and Messi in contention for an award. I was given PFA Players of the Year. I was given I think Players Player of the Year.
Right, right.
I had a stellar 2019, and that's a year and a half before I'm negotiating my contract, and then I had an injury. So why he can come to the table and say, if I'm agreeing to your structure and saying I know my market worth is probably 350,000, I'm still, because of my loyalty for the club, I'm staying in the limits. It's I'm not sure the financial implications it can have on the team ecosystem. So I feel it's not a simple answer as to what Salah deserves and what he gets. It's about what implications it has in the whole hierarchy of the club. It's a tricky situation to handle. My guess is that Liverpool wanted to create a situation whereby his wages are highly incentive driven, and he still sticks in the same bracket where he is 15-20% up and down of where he is, and then massive load on his incentives, per goal bonuses, per assist bonuses, per appearance bonuses. And so he naturally or indirectly will stand to inherit somewhere close to the 400,000 figures, but he'd still fit somewhere close to the 250, 280,000 bracket, which is not very high compared to the other standards, but it's still at the top of the tree. So that's my guess, is that, and that's my say, that a highly incentive driven contract would probably be a good shout for the ecosystem in which he is. Because I mean, Trent Alexander-Arnold can today stand up and say, if I go out in the market, I'm going to get whatever I ask for because I'm probably one of the best right backs in the world, and
Right.
I'm just 20, I'm in my early 20s.
Exactly.
I'm going to get whatever I want, but I'm staying here and I'm negotiating my contract because I want to stick to the contractual ethics that the club sticks to, the philosophy that the club sticks to. So it's a very gray area to have a clean opinion about. But as a fan, yes, as somebody who's just looking at it as a club, I say it's not that easy as all of us really want it to be. So that's kind of my say on that, in with regards to Salah's contract. But I'm hoping that they get it sorted very soon. I mean, that's something I believe in, because we've got a good, very steady backroom staff. We know that he
Right.
wants to see strategically for him. It'll be a stupid decision to now move, because the thing is, 31, 32, he's not going to get a 4-year contract anywhere he goes.
Right.
It's gonna be a 2-year, 3-year short deal where he goes, and it's it's to be honest, going to Spain right now doesn't make sense. Probably 3 years ago, it made sense to go to the Spain, go to the Madrids and the Barcelonas. Now it doesn't make sense going there. The only other place then is either Germany, so you go to Bayern, or you go to PSG,
Right.
because that's kind of the I'm guessing Salah wouldn't want to go to any other Premier League club. So I mean, the other factor that doesn't work in Salah's case is that he doesn't have a lot of leverage in terms of what the market is going to be for him. He'll be given whatever he asks for, but then it's going to be a very different shift for him. It won't be very. He's got about a couple of handful of, like, on one hand, you can count the number of options he has where he would be able to say, right, apart from my what I want as a contract, what my aspirations are as a player to win stuff. In France, it's not going to be as challenging day in day out, neither is
Right.
it going to be as challenging in other leagues as it is for him to play against a tightly knit Burnley team away
Right.
at their home
Absolutely.
ground.
Yeah, and
So
like, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
no, go ahead. So that's kind of my say on this.
Right. So I mean, like you said, his options are PSG or Bayern Munich. So it's either a round of 16 or a quarterfinal or semi-final exit in France, or
Sure.
it's a sure shot Bundesliga in Germany. Other than that, nothing is predicted. Uh,
Right.
but I mean, you mentioned that Liverpool might go for an incentivized based structure for him, where the
Right.
incentives are virtually certain. How big
Right.
of an impact does that make? I mean, financially, if I would bring that angle, if you are virtually certain that certain incentives would convert into expenses for the club, then won't
Mhm.
that affect the wage structure? I mean, virtually certain expenditure is to be accounted for, irrespective of whether it happens. I mean, if it doesn't happen and if the chance of it not happening is very close to impossible,
Right.
then it would obviously be accounted for. So I'm curious as to how the virtually certain incentives would not fit the wage structure. That's my question.
Um, so in to rephrase what I said in terms of fitting the wage structure, what I mean is as a club philosophy wage structure. So when it
Okay.
because inherently it's a media perception. Football is now a emotional media perception game now. So when you say Salah's on a 350,000 base salary contract, then the discussion starts about how the hierarchy is now changing in Liverpool. And so everybody from now who's going to come to the table to renegotiate his contract is going to have higher expectations.
Right.
Now, if the club says, okay, you want a higher contract, here's what we're going to do. You're going to get a 250,000 contract, and you get us 10 assists. This is what you get. You get 10 goals. You get this. The good part about that is the club's going to say, right, if a player's getting me such results, inevitably the club is finishing higher.
Right.
So whatever I'm going to be expending in incentives, it's indirectly going to flow back to me through some sort of a broadcasting or commercial deal or some sort of a inflow of money in terms of
Right.
either from the Champions League or finishing higher in the table. So the more you link the inflow of money and the outflow of money, it's easier to do that through incentives and performance
Right.
because individual incentive is ultimately going to drive a group performance.
Right.
So that's sort of why I come from the angle of driving incentives because when Salah, if on a weekly basis he's scoring let's say one goal every week, he's getting paid 25,000 pounds. If Salah's scoring one goal per week and that 25,000 is for per goal, he's scoring 38 goals for me. And this is a very theoretical explanation I'm giving. He's giving me
Right.
38 goals from the season.
Right. Right.
That means if one player's giving me 38 goals, I'm fairly certain I'm finishing in the top two or top three.
Right.
So I don't mind spending that amount if that gives me a certainty of finishing easily in the top three and taking the title challenge down to the last couple of weeks of the season.
Okay. Okay.
So that's sort of the logic behind having an
Fair.
incentivized wage budget.
Fair. So in very simple terms, we can say marginal revenue and marginal cost would be balanced out. So
Precisely.
your financial position will ultimately remain the same,
Right.
somewhat.
Somewhat same. Exactly.
Right. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the logic behind incentive based wages.
Right, right. So yeah, I mean Salah. I mean, from a neutral perspective and not a neutral but a rival perspective, I would not want to see Salah in the Liverpool jersey because that would mean more challenges for Chelsea and other teams as well. But from a neutral perspective, the joy of watching him and play and score such goals, you would want to see him in the Premier League, which is also touted as the best league in the world. Now,
Hmm.
talking about best league in the world will shift the attention to what is touted as the most entertaining league in the world. Now, this is a very
Right.
controversial take, and you are in one of the cities or towns which hosts a team which plays in the most entertaining league. We're not talking about the Bundesliga or the French league or the Spanish league. We're talking about EFL Championship. Now, you are
Right.
staying in Sheffield. You are, I think you saw a few matches at Bramall Lane also.
Right.
How is the environment there? Is it really that entertaining, or is it just something that people want to market and
Right.
drive media and more attention towards it? That is why they're
Right.
doing it?
That's a very nuanced question because how do you define entertaining? Are you talking about the football or are you talking about the event, the spectacle that is EFL?
Maybe a bit of both. If I get a match which is always a 2-2 or a 2-3 or a 4-2 with a few red cards and a bit of feistiness here and there, I would
Hmm.
doubt that to be as entertaining rather than a
Right.
nil-nil Burnley Watford draw, which can happen at any
Correct.
point of time in the Premier League.
Correct.
That's what I
Correct.
want. That's the angle I'm coming from.
Right. Right. Okay. So in terms of the football, I'd say the straight answer is no. It's not. It's not at the level that the Premier League plays at. Because like I'd say I'm in a decently placed position to say that because the first match I saw was Sheffield United play Southampton at Bramall Lane,
Okay.
and I watched another championship game, which was Barnsley against Sheffield. So
Okay.
I've seen a Premier League team play against an EFL team and an EFL team play against an EFL team.
Okay.
And there's a stark difference between the quality with which teams play. So, in terms of the quality of football, no. The
Hmm.
Barnsley and Sheffield game was quite a downer in terms of the quality of
I
play.
can see you
Uh,
respectfully holding back and no.
gotta live here, man. I have to live
You
here.
never know. You might end up at one of these clubs at some point in the
Yeah,
future, so you'd want to.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll do that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
I'll do
yeah.
that.
See, that always works. You don't get in
Yeah,
trouble
let's
along.
hope. But yeah, so and to be fair, it shouldn't be at the. I mean, if the game was at the level of the Premier League, that club would be playing there, and it's sort of a process of moving from there to the Premier League. And so I'm sure. I mean, Sheffield is still very much in the running, and I'll get to that point soon. But the quality of football which Southampton played with, despite the fact that they weren't really doing well at that point of time in their season, um, you could see the difference between individual players and the philosophy with which teams play. Sheffield United has a very stark philosophy of playing. They've got their centre half somehow sometimes going on overlaps, and they've got a back five that's
Right.
very fluid. So they have a very nice structure, to be fair. So they
Okay.
have a very unique way of playing. So when you watch them as if you want to look at the football, it is entertaining. It's quite fun to watch. But it's in terms of the quality that individuals can bring to the table. No, I'd say no. It's not at the same level. Um, Having said that, as a spectacle, it's fantastic. I mean, after getting here, I'm already invested in Sheffield getting promoted.
Okay.
So and the fun part of why called entertaining is because in the Premier League, if you're sixth, you don't have a chance of getting to the top two, top three, whenever or
Right.
whatever it is. The best possible chance you have is fighting for the Champions League spot at best.
Right.
In the EFL, the top six, anybody can end up in the Premier League. And that's amazing because the promotion happens in a way whereby the top two get promoted, and then the third promotion happens in a playoff series.
Okay. Yeah.
And so for that, third, fourth, fifth, sixth will vie.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Now, automatically, you instead of having four teams vie for a top three spot, you've got six teams. Possibly even now you've got six. Now, seventh and eighth are saying, hang on a minute. If we get a couple of results our way in the last three or four fixtures, this could be a good fight. So now you've got seven involved. Now you've got eight involved. So that inherently means that you've got half of the table till the last few weeks of the season still saying we can play in the Premier League.
Right.
And that's the entertaining part. That's what people mean when they say entertaining. That there are eight teams or nine teams if it's a really, really tight season. You've got almost half of the league saying, right, you never know we can finish in the top four. We need couple of results our way, four or five results towards the fag end of the season, and we're in.
Right.
And that's the entertaining part. So in fact, I was talking to a friend of mine on the same course. He's a local, and we were just discussing about the fact that the last playoff game that happens to figure out the third finish gets paid more than the last game that the Premier League champion
Oh.
plays.
Oh. Okay.
Because in terms of sponsorships for those events, in terms of advertisements run at halftime, in terms of advertisements run outside the stadium, inside the stadium, on the sidelines, all of this it builds up to a crescendo, right? Because it's
Right.
90 minutes, and you're either playing in the cream of the cream, or you're gonna get stuck there
Right.
and try next year, which might or might not be your.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the fun and entertaining part of it. That's where, even if you're out of it, you're not really out of it. So
Right.
that's the entertaining part of it.
Right.
So, and maybe Sheffield might be in that same space. So that's why we should go for the West Bromwich game, because if Sheffield beat West Brom, they're
Yeah.
gonna replace them at seventh.
Right. And I think West
That's
Brom right
the
now they fired their manager, and that's why they are also in a bit of a turmoil or something. I read somewhere.
Precisely. So there's a lot of firing. There's a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
the game's harder in the EFL. They go in a lot. In the Premier League, you one mistake causes a lot of damage. Like your right back commits a little bit
Right.
more than
Right.
he
Right.
should
Right.
have, and it will probably result, because that's the quality at which you're playing. In the EFL, there'd be more chances created, but the final output might not be the same. So you'd have a lot of out of your seat moments, but the scoreline might be 1-0
Okay. So that
because you don't
that is
have
very
that final.
common for me as a Chelsea fan. So I'm very used to this. I'm very used to this happening. That was the
So
entire
you want to
season
see
under
Chelsea play in
Lampard.
the EFL? I'm good with
No,
that.
that will definitely not happen. That is something
Right.
that I'm very, very certain about. But
Yeah.
I can relate to a lot of championship fans when the
Right.
output in the third half is so pathetic that you end up getting out of your seat and just sitting right back in.
Correct.
Who's the
Correct.
manager of Sheffield right now?
They replaced him. I'm not sure who he is right now. I forget. It's very weird to pronounce. I think that's why I keep
Okay,
forgetting his name.
okay. And
But
is Chris Wilder still a legend amongst the entire locality?
he is. He is.
Even
He
though he's
really
the
is.
manager of Middlesbrough, he's still a legend.
He is. I mean, he did a pretty good
Pretty
job
good job.
bringing Sheffield to the Premier League, having them play the way they did.
And
It does
almost finishing. I think it was pre-pandemic they were fifth, and then I think that
exactly.
was the reason for their entire downfall when they fell to ninth, which is still
Precisely.
very
Yeah.
respectable, very
Yeah.
respectable.
Yeah.
But
I think he's. I think that was why I have a lot of respect for Chris Wilder. I have a lot of respect for Nuno Espirito Santo as well.
right,
Because they come with a style that Marcelo Bielsa as well.
right,
You come with a style that you've devised is very unique to your team, which can't be replicated by anybody and very tough to break down. Because
right,
you can see how they're going to play. Like you know what's going to happen. You know that some point of time a center half is going to go on an overlap,
right,
but teams still weren't able to figure out how do we get past those overloads.
right.
And so it's fun watching those teams play, right? That's that like with
Absolutely.
Leeds, you see him man mark and stick to the same style even if he's
Yeah.
4,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the fun part. And the fact that EFL brings in a lot of talent to the Premier League as well.
Right.
So you have Premier League scouts, you have Premier League managers sometimes come down and watch them. You have youth team managers come down and watch games. So it's that element of chance that also team players in the EFL have, that right. You never know, for one match somebody might be down and I have a good game, and next thing I know, I'm being talked about in the next transfer window,
Exactly.
which happened with William Carvalho.
Right.
Not William Carvalho,
Fabio Carvalho.
Fabio
Yeah,
Carvalho.
yeah.
Right?
All the big
He's
clubs are now like having a take looking at him, and I think you guys
right.
tried to sign him and you could not because of the deadline day and all of that.
Exactly. So that's the anticipation that EFL brings as well. So for players as well, it is, to answer your question, it is entertaining in a lot of facets, and then it is also the hype in a lot of facets.
Right.
But it's fun. It is entertaining, to answer your
Right.
question.
Right.
Most entertaining, I'm not too sure.
I think most entertaining for us is the one that our team plays in and keeps winning. So
Precisely.
that can be the Champions League, or for us it can also be the Carabao Cup, which we are scheduled to play for. Can be an
Exactly.
entertaining one. And I think
Exactly.
to reflect on the one point you said, that where have we seen a third versus fourth place match happening at Wembley in a sold out crowd,
Exactly.
which I don't
Exactly.
think happens, and it's celebrated as if they have won something, which is they basically come third.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
I mean that was one thing which when I just started following football and I explored the other league, that was something that was very confusing for me. Like first and
Right.
second, they get nothing, like no such kind of celebration, no
Yeah.
such kind of attendance, and the third and fourth get such a massive turnout all the time for their match
Yeah.
at Wembley. It's always
Exactly.
played at Wembley also.
Exactly.
Right. So good. I'm happy that you've become one of the locals. It's somewhat like a Ted Lasso story. I don't know if you've seen the show, but
Haven't, haven't,
you haven't seen the show.
haven't
Oh,
seen
you
them.
have to see it. You have to see it. Yeah, you can watch it on Apple TV, but
I get it.
yeah, yeah. We'll talk off the recording. That will be much
Offline.
better
Yeah.
because I don't want this conversation to be in the public domain, especially this segment of it.
Yeah.
Right. So coming,
Right.
focusing our attention back to the Premier League now.
Right.
Two huge events have happened in the past month, in the past few months. Okay,
Correct.
one was very public. I mean, all the media had its attention on it. The fans had their attention on it. They were practically begging for the event to take place, which
Yeah.
is of course the Newcastle takeover,
Correct.
which was there for a very long time. I mean, I remember, I think a year or back or even before, the
Mm.
news of a
Yeah.
Saudi consortium just triggered the entire media outlets
Yeah,
in England, and some in
yeah,
favor, some against. Then I think it was Newcastle fans demanding Mike Ashley to release the
yeah,
club. All of this was happening, and now finally, after years of turmoil, the club has finally been taken over by the Saudi consortium. That is the
correct.
one more spoken about event, and the second event that kind of went under the radar but was still very significant was the
Mm,
Southampton takeover,
mm,
backed by a Serbian businessman. I don't know his name, but I know the company, Sport Republic. They took
correct.
over, I think, 80% for 100 million. So, I
Yeah,
mean, City paid 100 million for Jack Grealish, and that guy paid 100 million for Southampton, just for
yeah,
comparisons. And you
correct,
can be the judge of which one will be a better return on investment in the future, of course.
correct. Yeah,
So, I just want your thoughts from a financial perspective about the Newcastle takeover and then the Southampton takeover. First, the Newcastle one.
correct, correct. Oof. I think there are a couple of very big differences between those. But firstly, talking just about the Newcastle takeover, I think it was more of a show of power in terms of the value of the deal. Because to be fair, they wouldn't have had to pay so much money regardless. With the resistance Mike Ashley had in terms of the performance, in terms of his history with fans, it's not been exactly great. He tried to rename St James's Park as Sport Direct Park, or
Ooh,
the Sports Direct Stadium, because that's
risky.
the company he owns,
Yeah, yeah.
and he had a tremendous backlash. So it's not exactly been super, I guess, which is fair with all owners and fans. It's never exactly very nice because fans expect their owners to act like fans as well.
Yeah, care
They
basically.
expect, exactly, they
Yeah,
expect their owners to care. Exactly. So, to be fair, that deal could have gone in cheap, but that was sort of like a show of power. Like, we're in the market, we're ready to make those big moves. We're ready to come in. And the main difference in philosophy is that Newcastle's new direction is of recruiting from the directly active market of players who have been proven outside the Premier League or inside the Premier League, but who are sure shot buys.
right,
Players who are going to be established players, players who've shown good quality. Southampton's takeovers and the direction in which they want to move is strictly playing a sort of money ball game, if you will,
right,
in terms of very intelligent recruiting from the grassroots, picking on talent that's not been exactly seen, uh, sort of gambling on those players who fall in the gray area, and bring them in and train them. Because so there's a man called Ankerson who's now going to be a very, very big figure in the Sport Republic ecosystem, and he was heavily involved in the Brentford promotion. He was with Brentford for a very long
yeah,
time,
yeah, yeah.
but he was with Brentford primarily through their promotion stage as well. And so he was the
I
guy
think
who
I'm
was
sorry to interrupt you, but I think he's also the owner or related to StatsBomb, which is the company that looks after stats for Brentford, right? If I'm not wrong.
right. I'm guessing because he is heavily his when they came out with the strategy with which they're going forward, they were very clear in terms of using a lot of technology and a lot of data science to find out who they're looking for. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's a fact. And so that's the difference between where they see the individual clubs moving. One is, as you already see, they bought Chris Wood. Newcastle bought Chris Wood, and so they are not willing to really go down the intelligent recruiting and uh, a cheap buy and accept exponential returns. They're
right.
not really trying to go down that direction. Where Southampton's been very clear about excellent recruiting. They have a fantastic youth academy. They've created legends, nothing short of legends, to be honest, and
Right,
given us most of those, to be fair. But so that's the sort of strategy difference. The other difference also is that the value deals is a very blanket statement, right? 300
right,
million, 100 million.
right,
Like, and I know that the deals happen they're a lot more complicated
right,
than that,
right,
right?
right, right,
Because it can be like because with Southampton, they had a bit of I think they owed quite a bit of money to the group undertakings as well. They've got about 80 million in group undertakings.
right,
Now, I mean, the deal can be structured as simply as 100 million as the market value or the value at which the club's been brought. And it's also factored in that the 80 million would be as a repayment of loan on the club's behalf. But because it's just a repayment of loan to the previous group undertaking. It doesn't fall under the purview of actual value of the deal.
Right, right,
So the deal value might actually have been a little bit more, but strictly speaking, the 100 million does seem small, but the complexities of it are a lot more different than
right,
really visible. Because I think Gao Jiexing, who bought the club before, he bought it for 210 million, I think.
right. Okay,
So he didn't. It's kind of like Mike Ashley as well. He wasn't exactly having a good time with the fans. They were upset with the stagnation he had brought into the club. He wasn't really taking out any money, but he wasn't spending any money either.
right,
So there are a lot of factors that come into play. So just making a blanket statement of whether that deal was a cheap buy or an expensive buy would be ignoring some very important factors that I'm sure the clubs sort of work around and try to make sure that it matches the market value with which they're dealing with. But it's a very interesting buy. I think I'm more excited, to be honest, to see what Southampton do than what Newcastle are going to do. Strictly because it's a case of optimizing resources rather than increasing those resources and expending even more.
right.
So I'm very interested with what they are going to do going ahead.
Yeah, and I think I read in an article that Southampton's intentions were not like Newcastle's to, like you said, get instant success and challenge for the top six or the top four. Their aim is to kind of replicate what Manchester City's owners have done, is like to have a club at each continent playing at a
Mm,
decently good level and ensuring that they get a good
mm,
return on investment. So it would be
right.
very interesting to see which clubs Southampton target, and if they want to target an upcoming market like India, where ISL
Correct.
is now getting more and more traction, and we
Mm,
see partnerships between clubs here and clubs
yeah.
in Europe, it would be very interesting to see. Maybe we can see Southampton backed teams playing in the local leagues, and that
Yeah.
can result in an influx of talent both here and as well as there. Now,
Correct.
shifting our attention back to the Newcastle side of things, they have had a fantastic summer window. Like it was literally raiding the market. It was like handing a kid a $10 or a $20 or a 1,000 rupee, not 1,000, 500 rupee note, and just saying go in the market and buy whatever you want.
Mm,
That's
yeah.
literally what they did. But
Correct.
we've seen it's very hard for people to replicate or implement success right from the in the January transfer window, so to
Mm,
speak. I mean, the
correct.
last very good January signing I remember was Bruno Fernandes from Sporting to Man
Yeah.
United, and I think
Correct.
Luis Suarez was also a January signing. So these
Correct.
are very few examples of good signings that and good deals of business that have happened in January.
Correct.
Newcastle, I God knows how many players they've signed. Do you think that any of those players can give an instant impact along with the existing team that they have? And I mean, do you think that they will be able to survive relegation given the amount of business they have done?
Oof, that's a very interesting question. To be fair, I've from what I've understood from reading about recruitment that happens, especially at the top of the ladder, uh, the managers and management usually say that if we would have targeted this player in the coming summer window, regardless, then we're just preponing his arrival.
Right,
That's usually what happens when, like for example, it happened with Van Dijk and
right,
with Luis Suarez. The club was going to pursue him in summer regardless. So it stays with the philosophy of the club that this is going to happen. We're just trying to prepone it. He was going to fall into the plans, but ultimately we just decided to prepone it for whatever reasons we felt suitable. Now that's sort of sticking to what you wanted to do. It was a sure shot decision, but you still pulled it back. The problem here with Newcastle is that there are too many things happening with them.
right,
If they weren't in the relegation battle, this would have just been a no show season for them. Just get through this season, and then in summer let's regroup, and then let's go ahead.
right,
They've hired Eddie Howe, who I absolutely love, but he's not been in such a situation before. It's a
right,
new thing for him as well. He's not a Carlo Ancelotti or a Rafa Benitez who can sort of who's been through such different ups and downs of managing such situations. So he's new to the game as well, and so there's a big likelihood that this could end up very much like a, I don't know, Chelsea situation or an Arsenal situation till before Arteta, where Eddie Howe is just the transitionary manager, and in summer
Or
they're
even
going to try to make that.
like Nuno Espirito, the way he was
Precisely.
signed
Spurs
by Spurs.
situation. Spurs
Right,
would be a better example, right?
right.
So that he's just a transitionary manager who's going to give a face to the club, an established face to the club, but next season is going to be somebody like a, I don't know, a Mancini or a Pellegrini or who have you, I don't know. So it's tough to see what the vision is for the club, and when that's the case, I think that's where the real problems start. Having said that, I think there are a lot of clubs around them who can tank equally. I think they've. I mean, Burnley's doing okay, but I'm not sure how they're going to do it. Leeds are floating up, but it's still tough for them. You've got a couple of teams who are really struggling down there as well, and so it's an open table. But my bet is that Newcastle have done just about enough to move up, just
Okay,
about enough. Somewhere close to the 16th spot would be, I guess, where they end up, and that's only because of my faith in Eddie Howe,
okay.
because I really enjoy him. I was absolutely bummed when Bournemouth got relegated because I really liked him. He was a really good manager.
Right,
So
right,
I think my guess is that they make it past the relegation battle. That's
right.
what about what do you think? What's your take on that?
My take is from a neutral and an entertainment point of view, I would want them to stay up because that would mean even more crazy business in the summer, and that would mean even more unheard of stipulations and speculations that form into reality.
Right, right.
But like you said, the other teams are performing up more worse than them. And I feel
Yeah.
Newcastle have this X factor in the form of Alan Saint Maximin, who just in the middle of
Oh,
nowhere decides like that Thanos meme, like fine, I'll do it myself.
I'll do it
That
myself.
that
Yeah.
is what
He's exactly that.
that
Yeah.
is the kind of player he is. Once he gets the ball, he might take over, he might terrorize defenses, and then decide
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
ultimately score goals and get the points.
Correct.
So I feel
Yeah.
that if you factor in that part of him, and plus the defensive upgrades they have made, I mean Dan Burns is a
Yeah.
good player who has proven himself in the Premier League
Yeah.
with Brighton, and they
Yeah.
have had a 40 million signing. I don't know how they landed that of Bruno G. I don't know how to pronounce his surname
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Lyon. I mean, I think I
Correct.
remember Arsenal were chasing him, and I think a few more clubs were also chasing
Yeah.
him. And how has he ended up at Newcastle?
Yeah.
How? So
Yeah.
if you bring these factors in, you have Chris Wood, who given he's 30, it's a 25 million
Yeah.
is still a very rich buy. But
Yes.
if he's there in the box, if he's a poacher, if he's a person who can head the
Mm.
goals properly, and if you
Correct.
have a player like Alan Saint Maximin throwing in balls here
Mm.
and there, plus
Mm.
let's not forget you have Joe Linton who can somehow radically play a game
Correct.
as if as the one of the best in the world and then flop in the next
Yeah.
game. If you
Yeah.
have so many variables, I think just from the probability side of things, Newcastle is more likely to stay up than to go down. So
Yeah.
I would want them to stay up. I think they would stay up. They would finish 16th, 15th, I feel, because the other teams who are down there are playing much worse. I mean, I am surprised Leeds are having this shocker of a season right now. Given that first the hype when they got promoted,
Mm.
then the first season that they had, and then last season probably not the best. I think was last
Mm.
season there the season they got promoted. I think they are here for just for the
Last to
second.
last.
Last to last, yeah. I remember that initial game they had with you guys at Anfield when it was
Mm.
I think you were leading four by 3 or 4 goals, and then they somehow got everything back and
It was
cut the deficit.
a roller coaster. I think 2-1, 3-1, 3-2,
Yeah,
4-2,
and I think
4-3.
it was
That's what.
three
That's
three
how it
for a
went.
very long period of time before it
Yeah.
ended 4-3.
Yeah.
So this is very surprising for me. Norwich, I mean, I just feel
How
that
about Everton? Everton's just above the top zone, to be
oh,
fair.
yeah, I'm going to back Everton. I'm not,
Yeah.
sorry, correction. I'm not going to back Everton. I'm going to back the manager of Everton and the
Right.
backroom staff of Everton because that is practically Chelsea players picked up, Chelsea backroom staff picked up and put in a different situation. And I would
That's
really
good.
want Everton to stay up because I want to see Frank Lampard. I would want to see him reignite the rivalry with Steven Gerrard and
Mm.
have that clash that they used to have at club level as managers.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I live in this fantasy world where I would want to see Gerrard coming to Liverpool and Lampard coming back to Chelsea as a
Yeah.
proven manager and then having that
Right.
tussle. It's just a script for a movie. So
Yeah, it
that
is.
all begins with Everton staying up. And I think they will. I think they will. I
Yeah.
think Rafa did a very horrid job and I don't know how he was back for so long. I think the
Yeah.
fans were unhappy with him very, very early. I think initially, I think on the first day itself or something, or initially few matches they won, so fans were there.
Mm.
Then they started playing boring football, but they still scraped out results. So I think
Mm.
fans were okay with that. But then when they started losing left, right, and center against teams like Watford and I think Norwich also won against them. I think they did 3-1 or
Yeah.
something. I'm not too sure about it. But that I think was the final blow for Rafa. And I
Mm.
think he had player altercations as well with Luca Digne, I think. And all of this, I think it's a perfect time for Frank to step in. He's a
Mm.
proven championship manager. I feel so. I mean, I know people have this argument that, yeah, he finished sixth with Derby and all of that. But then you see that in his first year of management, if he's playing for the playoff spot, and then getting back to Chelsea, coming back to
Mm.
Chelsea as a manager. I know that was a very transitionary phase, and he was just the face
Yeah.
of the organization until the next manager came in. But still
Mm.
getting top four, promoting youth, staying up, reaching the Champions League quarterfinals. I know it doesn't sound much, but these are very strong achievements that laid down the foundation for Thomas Tuchel to come in and
Mm.
give all the results that we are seeing. So Frank Lampard, I feel, is a proven manager up to an extent. I would like to
Mm.
see him resume that at Everton, and he has
Correct.
got players that he wanted. Like he got Van de Beek, he got Dele Alli. I don't know how good of a signing Dele Alli is, but Van de Beek is a
Mm.
very good signing.
Very good one,
I
yeah.
don't remember which other players he signed, but I think they also got rid of some deadwood. Or I mean, the only blow for them is they got rid of Luca Digne, who was a
Correct.
very very good player. And I am equally
Correct.
bummed that he did not come to Chelsea, but I'll get into that later.
Right.
So I feel Everton might just stay up if you implement a good, and Lampard plays with I
Mm.
think a 4-2-3-1, and I think if he implements that well at Everton, and if he
Mm.
also promotes the Everton academy there, you never know, they might stay up.
Right.
So
Right.
lots of
Yeah.
things happening in the Premier League, and I am very happy that Frank is back. I mean, I just love to see. I mean, he's a Chelsea legend. I think you mirror these emotions when you see Gerrard play. Gerrard take over Aston Villa's manager. You only supported him entirely, barring the Liverpool game, and you would want him to play well. You would want him to get the results
Yeah.
that you like. I read
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
that Suarez is coming to Aston Villa. I read somewhere he wants
Yeah,
a.
that was a rumor. There was
Okay,
a rumor floating around,
okay,
but I'm not sure. I'm not too sure how much salt's in there. But
right.
yeah, I'm actually going for the Villa Leeds game next week.
Oh,
So
oh.
I'll
And what
get to
seats do you
see.
have? Are you behind Gerrard or you're far away somewhere?
Oh, I'm right opposite the dugouts.
Okay, okay.
So it's gonna
So,
be farther out, but I mean,
yeah,
I'll take anything I'll get
yeah.
at this point in
You can
time.
see a lot of throw-ins. That's all I think you'll be able to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I'll see Luca Digne throw in a couple of
right,
balls. I'll
right,
see Coutinho
right.
do a couple of. But I'm fine. It's my
Yeah.
first Prem game, so I'm
Oh,
excited about
fantastic. See if you can ask
it.
Lucadine why he did not come to Chelsea on my behalf.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
answer. I don't think Lucadine can give that answer. I think nobody can give that answer. I think
Yeah.
I mean I read a bit about the Chelsea financials that have happened. This year
Right.
was horrible for us. Horrible. I mean, last year we
Mm.
had a 35 million profit. This year we have a 153 million loss.
Yeah.
That's a like proper downfall by 185 million. And the
Yeah.
revenue that we have increased is only cyclical because the matches
Correct.
in 1920 got pushed to 2021 because of the
Correct.
pandemic. So
Correct.
if that would not have happened, we would have had a very, very bad, even horrid result. And
Correct.
the player acquisitions, I mean, they helped, but they did not help financially. And
Right.
player acquisitions lead to player amortizations, lead to more
Right.
wages, and all of this is without Lukaku on the balance sheet. He's
Correct.
not there. That is going to happen in the next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what your perspective is on this, but I feel that the just the sentiment that why did we not sign a left back? Why did we not?
Mm.
The board is incompetent. Marina is incompetent.
Sure.
We can't get rid of Deadwood. I think that is just your will. I mean, just a rant. I mean, you're not actually looking into the financials of it. I mean,
Correct.
the player amortizations are going to increase like anything because we have had, I mean, a 97.5 million addition in the
Mm.
intangible assets just of one player.
Mm.
So to have another player come in January and then to manage his wages and then
Mm.
add to the administrative expenses, add to the other expenses. I don't think it made a lot of sense. And
Mm.
I think the board anticipated that, and that's why we did not sign anyone. We recalled Kennedy on loan from Flamengo. We have Malang Sarr who's playing in the left wing back position. So, I mean, I understand the sentiment of Chelsea fans. I also am a Chelsea fan, and I would also want. If it was me and if we were in a good position, why not sign whichever left back we want in the world right
Mm.
now? But unfortunately, that's not the case. I think we are this year. I think we are cash flow. We are cash flow negative, but the negative is a very small amount, like only
Mm.
700, 800,000 pounds, which is not much. So
Right.
it's not a good situation for us to sign someone right now
Right.
and take on the already high amount of deadwood that we have.
Right.
And Lukaku's wages are going to be 300,000 plus, 325k.
Mm.
Then his amortization is going to be insane. So all of
Yeah.
those things, we had a net spend. We had a what? Only a 10 million net spend in the summer. We had
Mm.
players going out, but I don't
Yeah.
think those players had wages the level of Lukaku. And I think
Correct.
that is the very reason why we could not sign another player. I think that is why we chose to stick to our guns. I know that is not something which Tuchel wanted. And I
Mm.
think more than Chilwell's injury, I think Reece James' injury was more problematic for us.
Mm.
Because we could play Aspi on the right wing and we can play Reece on the left wing. But when he is also gone, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate when you have Marcos Alonso as the only viable left back option.
Mm.
I'm not even saying the better or the only viable left back option, which
Right.
is very
Right.
scary. Which is it does
Yeah.
I can't sleep at night when I think of Marcos Alonso. I mean when I think in a match or so, I don't remember which one. I think Tariq Lamptey against Brighton, he
Mm.
terrorized Marcos Alonso. He
Yeah.
absolutely terrorized him. And I
Yeah.
think, and that was still not a wake up call for the board to like try and do something. Like, can we get someone? Can we get
Right.
him?
It's funny though. You talked about player additions in your balance sheet. I think the bigger thing that sort of, and I think you'll be able to find that in the financials as well, is that the problem is not just the player cost; it's the wage budget that takes a big hit as well. A player is going to come in at 200,000 a week. That's going to cost you 10 million
Right,
at least in his base salary.
right,
That's
right.
10 million
Without the
over the cost
incentives.
for his player acquisitions without that's just the base salary that you pay him regardless of what happens to him.
Right,
And that's something that is easily overlooked in the Premier League. And like you said, you can't go left, right, and center signing players as much as you want. And that's probably one of the things that, of course, transfers is something that's it's a topic that we can discuss at length. But the thing is that with wage structures, the Premier League does not have a capping mechanism, and the capping mechanism is a very complex capping mechanism. I'm not saying that's the only solution, but the Spanish league has that. Almost all of American sports have
right,
that. That if you have 100 rupees coming in, you can't spend 100 rupees going out in wages. That's not how a club can remain sustainable, and
right,
that's why you see so many teams going into administration.
right,
And so it's not it's a deeper rooted problem than having a backup left back who's not that good. I think the problem is deeper in terms of the philosophy of the club, in terms of how your team roster looks like, in terms of how your financials look like, how you're circling back to our first question that we discussed, which is how does your wage structure look like? How
right,
much of matching to the market can you do? And how much can you actually afford and not just go on a spending spree? So it's a complex issue to figure out than just saying that, right, this is not working out, we need to go out and
right.
buy somebody to replace him. But hang on a minute, he's on a 4-year contract with 250,000 going
Precisely.
out to him every week. That's 10 million pounds going out to him every year for the next whatever number of years, even if
Right.
he's on as a backup. Add to that, if he's going to play backup, I can't sell him and at a price of 150% of what I bought him.
Exactly.
I bought him at 50. If I'm benching him, paying him 10 million every year and selling him at 20, how do I fund this club to
Precisely.
survive?
Precisely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a very complex problem to deal with for clubs at any stage of growth, be it at the top or even if you're in the EFL.
Right. And I think,
Yeah,
like you said, buying players is not easy, and getting rid of players is also not easy at all. I mean, the
exactly.
interview, the classic interview that happened with
Yeah,
Romelu Lukaku. I
yeah,
mean, it was not a situation where we were like, yeah, okay, fine, you did this, you said this, you want to go back to
yeah.
Inter, piss off. You just can't do that. And he is a $97.5 million acquisition for Chelsea. You can't, no
Correct.
club in the world would want to purchase him at that cost as well. They would obviously
Exactly.
want a pay cut because this is, in a way, a stress sell. So you
Correct.
would not want. I mean, I don't understand the notion behind fans wanting this, and obviously, I mean, I was also one of them. I was also very passionate, and I was like, I don't want to see this player play for Chelsea again. Anytime he celebrates, I think it's all just snake tears and whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
crocodile tears, whatever the phrase is. But
Yeah,
ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're paying him, if he's the highest earner at Chelsea, and if
right.
you are not playing him, it looks
Mm.
not only just bad financially, but you are answerable to your investors, you're answerable to the
Correct.
shareholders. You would want them to expect you to play your touted as the best asset, irrespective of whether it is performing or not. And I
Yeah,
think that
yeah.
is why we have players like Saul Niguez on loan, who we are not playing, but we're paying him wages of excess of
Correct.
100K a month, 100K a week.
Correct.
That
Right.
is 5 million, 6 million that you can use for, let's say,
Precisely.
renewing someone else's contract. And I
Right.
think that is also why we are not able to land these contract renewals as easily as we would want them. I mean, we have this one policy, I think, which you're aware of, that any player above 30 does not get a more than a 2 year deal. So that
That's
for,
something that Liverpool's starting as well,
oh, they
actually.
are. So
Yeah,
who
yeah.
would be the players affected by this? I think Henderson would be
Uh,
one.
Gini Wijnaldum was actually
Okay.
that's the reason why he left. He wanted a long
Okay.
term contract.
Okay.
Liverpool were not. I mean, of course, wages was something that was up for discussion because to be fair, his demands weren't uncertain. I mean,
Right.
he was
Right.
earning lesser than Oxlade Chamberlain and Divock Origi.
That is
So I mean,
harsh.
his wage demands were fair, but he also wanted a 4 year extension. He didn't get it. James
Right.
Milner's been on a 1 year extension every season.
Yeah.
From now on, I think Jordan Henderson's next contract will also be probably a year and a half, 2 years extension. So that's something that's actually Liverpool has. They made an exception for Thiago, which I
Hmm.
don't know how that happened, but that's something that Liverpool is doing as well.
Right, right. And I think,
Yeah,
I mean, I can understand the player sentiment as well. They would want some certainty about their future. They would not want to play in an environment where they are playing for a year and they don't know where they're going to play
mm,
next. And players above 30, most of them would be married, would be have kids, would
sure.
have settled lives. And that's why you can't just have a situation where they leave their life and go to a different country
Correct,
altogether. So I can
correct.
understand these things that they would want to consider.
Yeah.
And I think another, from the Chelsea perspective, I think that's why Willian left, because we were offering
Mm,
a 2 year deal, he wanted a 3 year deal. And
right.
I mean, I can understand the sentiment, but at the same time, Lukaku is on a 4 year contract, and or
Mm,
I think a 5 year contract, and his contract expires when he turns 32 or 33, which is a
right.
very scary thing. Very, very.
Right.
So we have paid 100 mil for a player who will end his contract at the age of 32.
Mm,
And if that was Thiago Silva, I would take that in a heartbeat. But it's not Thiago
right.
Silva. It's Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah.
Thiago
Yeah.
Silva is not 37. He's 27, or he's even
27.
26.
Yeah.
He is not
He's so
37.
good.
There's
Yeah.
no
He's really.
chances. Can you say that he has been the best defender this season, or one of the best defenders? I mean, do you think he's better this season, or is it Ruben Diaz, or is it Virgil van Dijk? What would you say? Just throwing
Yeah.
it out there.
Ah, to be fair, I've really liked Rudiger as well. I know he's had and I've not watched all Chelsea games, but the ones I have watched, he's been very solid. He's been
Right.
really solid.
Right.
So I'd say to be honest, and I had this discussion with a friend of mine as well, which is we genuinely feel Joel Matip looked as secure as Van Dijk
Right.
this season.
Right.
He's looked really good. He's looked like he's been owning it since the season's beginning. But I'd say strictly because because of the high line that Liverpool's been playing and a sort of disjointed midfield because of injuries, because of a variety of reasons, I'd say Thiago Silva probably outshines Van Dijk just a little bit.
Right.
Just a little bit, I do think so. Because I think it probably comes down to the philosophy of it,
Right.
of how Liverpool's been playing and how we've been conceding goals. and I'm not sure 100% how Chelsea have been conceding the goals they have been. But I'd say, yeah, it's a tough one. But I'd say Thiago Silva, objectively speaking, yeah, Thiago Silva's probably had one of his. I mean, one of I've not seen a Chelsea centre half have such a good season since, I don't know, John Terry left. I don't
Right,
know.
exactly.
I don't remember a centre half as strong and as dominating as
Right.
Thiago Silva.
I mean, you have Aspilicueta, but I think Aspilicueta always goes under the radar because I think
Hmm.
The drawback for him to be one of the best players was that he played in the Hazard era. So
Right.
it's very difficult for someone to not look at Hazard and look at Aspi and then say like he's the best and
Correct.
what. Right
Correct.
now, I
Correct.
can say, and lots of Chelsea fans can say that Thiago Silva is my current favorite Chelsea player.
Hmm.
Like there is no discussion about it.
Right.
I mean, I would put him above Mount. I would put him above Mendy. I'll put him above Rudiger.
Hmm.
I'll put him above everyone because
Right.
first of all, the guy is 37. He's
Hmm.
37 and he has runs. He has the awareness. I mean, countless times if you rewatch some of the Chelsea games where Thiago Silva has done something very well, you can hear the
Right.
commentators say he's aging like fine wine, or he's
Hmm.
always there in his cool and calm, collected self.
Correct.
He just knows where to be. He's there at the
Yeah.
right time. So when you hear these things again and again, you can see that the player is definitely making an impact, and his last minute interventions and tackles stop potential goals and potential runs as well. So, I mean, to be very honest,
Yeah.
a friend of mine and I, we were having this discussion, and he said that when Thiago Silva was injured in the 34th minute of the Champions League final, I felt that I mean, he felt that he had lost it. Because
Right.
Christensen is a very good player. I mean, I give him that. He's an academy product.
Hmm.
He plays brilliantly, but he's no
Right.
Thiago Silva. He's no
Right.
Thiago Silva. There is only
Yeah.
one Thiago Silva. And personally, just to rattle some of the Red Devil fans, I will always say that he's the best 37-year-old in the league. There is no other better 37-year-old in the league, in my opinion at least. Just to rattle a few fans here and there.
Yeah. Why not? Why not?
Why not? Exactly. So,
Fair point. Yeah.
right. So now you mentioned player valuations are very, very complex. I
Yeah.
mean, I think I heard a few episodes from one of the podcasts that I listened to, Ranks FC, where they were talking with a player agent about how complicated those player transfers can be. Uh, can you give me some examples of what could be the reasons why deals take so much time and why how these valuations effectively work from a
Yeah.
sports management side of things and
Yeah.
not the agent side of things?
Um, I mean, starting off with the very basics, it comes down to where how happy he is in the current team he's playing with. That has a massive impact on what happens with the valuation. Case in point would be Philip Coutinho's move to Barcelona. He just wanted to move. He wanted to move. He wanted that. So it firstly comes down to whether the club wants him off, whether the club wants to cash in on what this player's current market value might be, or whether he wants to go.
Right,
And then the other stuff comes into play: playing time, injuries. One very important thing that is factored in is how many years does he left have left on the contract.
right,
uh, what is his current wage structure, whether he wants to move at an equivalent club or whether he wants to move to a club that's bigger than them. Then it starts going into finer details, like for example, with which are the clubs with which the selling club has good relations. Liverpool has really good relations with Southampton. They don't have really good relations with Fulham. That's one of the reasons why, I think, and it was partly triggered by, I think there was a Harvey Elliott
right.
story behind
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah. Liverpool
something
have
went
good
sour in
relations
that
with
team.
Southampton despite that Van Dijk fiasco that happened.
Van Dijk's fiasco was primarily driven by him. He wanted that move, and the club was putting up a resistance. I mean,
Okay, okay,
there were cases of him uh, turning up late for practice sessions or something like that. I
okay,
think that
okay.
was primarily because he wanted that.
Okay.
So relations with Liverpool and Barcelona are not that good
Hmm.
with the Coutinho transfer.
Oh,
So
it
it
was Coutinho. I
yeah,
thought it was that corner taken quickly. That's why the relations have deteriorated.
I think that is the fan base's relations deteriorating. I mean, I'd say I have amazing relations with Barcelona fans. Let's do it. But But I mean, in terms of the management and those people coming into play, I think relationships with Barcelona went sour when they put out a Philippe Coutinho poster before launching it, and
Right,
then they took it down and stuff like that. So, and then when there are competing clubs who come into picture, then there are a couple of clubs who have interest in buying a player. Then the club has to make a decision, right? Which is the most strategically correct decision to sell? Does it make sense selling this player for 5 million less right now to a club, and then having good relations, letting them know, you owe us one, and then we knowing that they've got a good crop of talent coming up, we might have a deal in place. So there are a lot of strategic things that come into play. Of course, agency is an entirely different ball game altogether in terms of how the agents deal with it.
right, right,
Managers don't usually deal with contract situations, is what is from what I know. They are not heavily involved. Of course, managers have different styles of managing, but most managers don't involve themselves in contract talks. They only communicate to the management how desperately they want this player in the to fit into the team philosophy. The
right,
rest is left to the club, the management, and the players' agents.
right,
So, and the player is sort of has a clarity with his agent as to how sure he is to stay with this club, and then it's all up to the agent's power of negotiation to say he's going to stay at the club if XYZ things happen.
right,
And so that's the staying part. The negotiation part is primarily comes down to relations that clubs have with each other, the financial fair play bit, which now UEFA and FIFA are really putting in an effort to strengthen. The EFL is putting in an effort to strengthen them. With Derby County being in the position that they are,
right,
there's a
right,
very, very heavy pressure on the English FA to come up with a very good solution to I'm sorry, the EFL to come up with a very good solution to not have situations like there are people like for us it's difficult to fathom it, but there are Derby fans who've been fans for 50, 60 years. It's you see when you go for a game, you see the closer you get to the stadium, you see people walking out of different lanes, and you see an old couple holding hands with a walker in their hand, which is walking to the stadium. I remember talking to a couple who said, right, we've been fans for as long as we've been married, and so it means a lot to a club. And so when football clubs go into administration, it's a big blow for such fans.
right,
It really means a lot to them. It's one of those things where you say, right, I work extremely hard down at the mill for 6 days a week only so that I on Sunday when I switch on the television at 6, I get for
right,
2 hours I can just drown into that without
right, right,
thinking about
absolutely.
it. It's one of those things. So EFL and FFP and a financial regulation is something that clubs now need to figure out with like how Barcelona had to do to accommodate the Ferran Torres transfer.
Right,
So that's now it's getting easier for selling clubs to create more leverage,
right,
for transfers to happen. Add to that, in general, I was reading a research paper about English clubs generally end up paying a higher premium for players regardless.
okay.
So
Not just
that's
English
what
players or any
all
particular.
players. When an
Okay.
English players, you remember the English tax,
English tax.
which
Right, right, right.
that's because the English the EFL model is very it's as market oriented as it gets.
Okay,
In Spain, there is a set of regulations that you have to stick to. 70% of your revenue can be wages, not more than that. You
okay.
have to file your financials in a particular way. They will be vetted, they'll be properly audited. In England, that's not the case. You had a year ago, you had Sheffield United spending 115% of their revenue
Ooh,
in wages
okay.
and staff costs and other expenses. So, and that's putting a club into a lot of pressure. You're keeping all your bets on the fact that they're going to get promoted and you're going to get more money from broadcasting and commercial deals. So it's a big bet to place. And
Right,
so in England, it's a very market oriented situation, and selling clubs know that. They know that you've got a lot of money here. You have a lot of US backed company. You have US backed US companies backing Premier League
right,
clubs. You've got
right,
Crystal Palace, you've got Arsenal, you've got Aston Villa, you've got Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester United. All of these clubs, almost half of the Premier League has some sort of US company involved in their ownership too.
Right.
So you know they have the money. If they don't have the money, they're going to bring the money. And if they don't bring the money, their fans are going to give them a lot of shit about it. That there was a player transfer that was there for you to happen. There was a selling club identified. You knew the price tag. And especially when clubs don't perform after a transaction doesn't fall through.
Right.
So there's a lot of social pressure that comes into player valuations as well. And so that's why you'd see now Harry Kane now Harry Kane will not go for 100 million.
No, he
That's the
won't. He
truth.
would. That's definitely not going to happen.
The last transfer window was his best way for Spurs to make 100 million off of him and for him to go to City.
Right.
So another factor then that comes into the play is that the desperation of having that player in that particular moment as opposed to having that player 6 months down the line, because now City won't say we need him desperately. They
Right.
don't need him.
They don't
They're
need him.
tearing apart teams. United
Right.
won't. Now Chelsea won't say we want him.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have Luka.
Unfortunate.
So
Okay.
there are,
I don't know. I'll not say unfortunately, but I mean,
it is what it is.
it is
Yeah,
what it is. The return on investment, in so to
is
speak, in
not
financial terms, is not
correct.
there. But yeah,
Correct.
go ahead. Go ahead.
So that's sort of listing down a couple of parameters which determine what's the valuation of that. And add to that again, if you're talking about transfers of well-established players, then comes into the fact that right when I do a deal with Messi, I'm bringing in a lot of commercial deals
Commercial
for the
deals.
club as well.
Right. Right.
And so that's a factor that comes into play, which is why Madrid was very open to pay whatever they wanted to pay for Ronaldo when that transfer happened, because they knew that they're going to recover a tremendous amount of money from Ronaldo's jersey sales. Just
Right.
that
Right. Right. Right.
brand image and everything, that's completely different. Just jersey sales is going to be a mammoth amount. And so I think with bigger stars, it gets more complex because commercial deals happen in a very different way. The valuation of commercial deals also changes based on how much, say, the club has with regards to telling the player which commercial deal he can and can't do.
Right.
So, Neymar doing a commercial deal with, I don't know, Facebook, for example, and the club having a say on whether he can do that or not, that's going to determine a lot of things in that as well, and that comes into picture not directly but indirectly when you have people putting in investment, like for example, with the Arsenal case, if for example the
Right.
Spotify owners were trying to buy
Right. 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 Right.
Arsenal, and then let's say Aubameyang says that right, I'm going to do an ad for another music
Yeah.
broadcasting,
Yeah.
or
Exactly.
they want to say no, you can't do that, that doesn't
Right.
suit the image. So those things then come into play,
Play.
valuation and commercial deals valuation, so on and so forth. So I mean, I'm probably not even covering half of the factors that might be
Right.
affecting a player valuation, but those are the ones that really off the top of my head I can think of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's fairly complex.
Yeah, I think you said the complexity is, I mean, from your end, you've covered the club side of things a bit.
Right.
I remember
Right.
listening to that episode of Ranks FC where they talk about agent fees and everything. I think they said that a deal that on paper sounded so simple as AS Roma to Liverpool, Allison moving, it was one of
Mm,
the most complex deals that people have had to deal with. I think a total of 60 plus parties had to go through the contracts and vet them. So in one way or the another, player agents, the
mm,
government, the arbitrators, whatever, whosoever they might be. So I can
right.
only imagine, and then you bring in all of these clauses.
Right.
You have players who put in very agents, sorry, put in very reasonable clauses like a 20 goal, 30 goal, whatever it might be, and then you have someone putting in a Ballon d'Or clause
Correct.
at a for a certain French player who is now not playing at the club that he originally signed for. So
So much of complexity in that statement. My God.
I have to be very careful about targeting clubs because
Yeah.
if my intention is to maybe have a collaboration in the future with so and so people,
Fair.
I
Fair.
would want to be careful. Yeah, I've
You
always
should have
been.
known this before the podcast started. Now I feel that I've gone
It's
after a
fine.
lot
It's
of
fine.
clients.
It's fine. It's fine. See, the risk for you is more than it is for me because for you, you plan to do business and employment with them.
Yeah.
For me, this can be a part time thing. I can just I can go back to the old proven model of did you see this match? How was it? Etc. etc. So it's fine for me.
Way to go with making me feel good. Thank you.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Everyone has their fair share of whatever.
No, that's
Anyways,
fine.
yeah. So like you said, player valuations are very complex, and I think
Yeah.
it's still surprising that given this market, the Neymar transfer is still the world record for the most
Yeah.
highest transfer pay. I think it was $222 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you think that the market ever since has become inflationary? I mean, somehow that one transfer has now, had a snowball effect on each and every transfer. Or
Hmm.
is it harsh to say that only one transfer has caused this?
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to say that it's just that. I think the market was building up to that regardless. I think with the number of Middle Eastern owners that are coming in, the amount of money people are willing to pour into football clubs, the amount of pull that football clubs have, it's literally exponentially growing every year. Like
Right,
legitimately every year, it grows to a point where uh, the Premier League stopping would have a mammoth impact on the economy of the UK and probably indirectly a couple of countries in
right,
Europe as well.
right.
So it's not just that. I mean, you look at the Jadon Sancho transfer as well. It was exorbitantly high. I feel for a player who's yeah, fantastic player, but a player who I wouldn't say validated what he validated
Exactly.
at that point of time.
Right.
You know, I'm very bad with timelines. I'm not sure about whether the Neymar transfer happened after or before the Allison transfer. I'm not 100%
I
sure.
think
I think
Allison happened in 2018, right?
right. I think yeah,
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 so I
28.
think it was before. I think it was in
Correct.
2017. I think it
Correct.
was 2017.
Yeah, look at the Osman Dembele transfer as
Right,
well. So I think
right.
it was all building up to that moment. I'd say it's not. I mean the Ronaldo transfer to Real Madrid. You know,
Hmm.
uh, the problem is that now there are a lot of flag bearers, potential bursts that are going to happen that you can see, and people are sort of at that. Like if you look at Neymar is sort of that confused generation. He's not in the Messi Ronaldo generation, and he's not in the Mbappe Haaland
Right, right.
generation. He's somewhere in the middle, and he was the only guy there.
Exactly.
There weren't a lot of players in the same Neymar bracket. I can't think of a lot of them, and so his transfer was going to eventually be that big. Now you've got Mbappe, you've got Haaland, you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I'm not guessing he'll transfer somewhere, but
He has the
in terms
definite potential to transfer.
right? You've got Rashford, who's till a few weeks ago you had Greenwood,
Right,
who would have been there. I don't know. There's Phil Foden, there's Mason
right,
Mount.
right.
There are these players who fit that zone of yeah. They're gonna be really good. There are a crop of players who 3 years down the line they are going to be the players
The
and
players, right.
you got Foden, who I'd say he's going to be at the same level as Mbappe and Haaland. He's a very different player, but I'd say it's a very serious battle between Mbappe, Foden, Haaland, all of these players.
And I
Excuse me,
think
Trent
we are
Alexander.
forgetting that Vlahovic also went for 75 million,
Exactly, exactly.
which was unexpected to happen in a January for a club which
Right.
is in a bit of turmoil like Juventus.
Precisely, exactly. And so I think uh, it was building up to that. I think it's sort of been like that since 2012, 2014, when that broadcasting deal happened between the Premier League and Sky Sports and BT,
Right,
which was where they really started pulling the big bucks for the broadcasting money. And then Liga BBVA started, and then you had the PSG takeover happened, and and City coming in. So it's been that football has been attracting money as is from the turn of 2010 or so.
right. I think the World
Football's
Cup in
just
South Africa
yeah,
was one of the pivotal moments that
yeah,
people saw
exactly,
that, yeah,
exactly.
even in a country like South Africa, there is massive turnout for
Precisely.
big games.
Precisely. And so I think then it starts to change. Like you've got Hyun Min Song,
Right,
who's bringing in a mammoth fan base from South Korea.
right,
And so now nobody people are going to say, right, I don't mind buying Son Yun Ming for I don't know 30% above his market value because I know I'm going to recover that from shirt sales,
Exactly.
or bringing in a fan base, or people traveling from South Korea to Europe are going to choose coming to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium
Exactly.
or the
Exactly.
buying club stadium. So you've got people pulling that fan base in. Now you've got the entirety of Africa behind Mane and Salah.
Precisely. And Mendy
You know,
also. Mendy also. They
and
have
Mendy,
insane
exactly, and
support for
Mendy.
Mendy.
Precisely. And so that's you got Christian Pulisic.
Precisely. Precisely.
So
Absolutely.
and that was not there 6 7 years ago.
Right. Right.
You didn't have player. Probably the one of the examples I can think of is Park Ji-sung,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
right? But you didn't have those player. It was very Europe centric. The whole game was Europe centric, and so you knew that you're going to be entering or penetrating markets that are already saturated.
Right.
Now, because of recruiting policies as well, it's so big that you remember the Tottenham Hotspur Markande
Yeah.
suddenly coming up to the fore. Now you got people saying, "Oh, Spurs, okay, Spurs. Let's see what they're all about." And so it's a very trickle down effect that factors into ultimately coming up with player valuations as well. But I don't think that the Neymar transfer was single-handedly responsible for hiking up the market. I think it's
Absolutely.
it's been like that for quite a while. It was building up to that, and I don't think it's going to sort of. If only the sort of pandemic it probably gave a break in terms of the inflation
Right.
pullback tiny bit. But again, Jadon Sancho happens and Jack Grealish happens, and we're back.
Right.
Now I think it's going to be even more. Clubs are going to say, right, we want to be the first to recover and make those big signings and kick off.
Right. So, quick one.
So
Who do
yeah,
you think can break that record? Do you think it will break, and who do you think will break it?
oof. I'm not sure about what the Mbappe and Haaland, how many years they have on their contracts. But my guess is that one of them, yeah, I'd say either of them. Yeah. Do you have a number in
I
mind, or do you
I
think it's not
I
either of
don't
those?
think either of them will break it. I'll tell you why. First
Yes.
of all, Mbappe might go on a free.
Correct.
So that way there is no transfer fee. There is only
Correct.
player wages. And
Correct.
Haaland has a 70 or 80 million release clause. So I
Ah,
don't
right.
see teams wanting to bid so much for the
Sure.
transfer fee. They'd rather
Correct.
bid for the agent and the all
Hmm.
those kind of fees. I
Correct. Correct.
genuinely think a player with the potential of Trent Alexander-Arnold or
Right.
Phil Foden, like you said, or even, as it hurts me to say it, but Mason Mount, if
Hmm.
at all they choose to leave their clubs, I
Right.
feel they have more potential to break the
Correct.
record. I felt for a while that Vlahovic could have broken the record
Hmm.
after the Haaland and Mbappe signings, and if he would have
Right.
stayed at Fiorentina and if he would have delivered more and more goals. But
Right.
I don't
Right.
think that will happen. I don't think if he
Correct.
has a stellar few years at Juve, we might see him move because he's only
Correct.
21.
Correct.
You might
Yeah.
see him come to any of the
Yeah.
big clubs.
It's
I
very interesting. All the players that you mentioned are English players, and that sort of builds up to the point that English transfers have that the English media is also going to tends to
exactly,
create the hype
exactly.
around the player, and at the same time, you know for the fact that English players will attract more money because of the environment.
Precisely, precisely. And any of the clubs in Europe, if you want to sign players, I don't think they will go for even more than 100 million. It's very unlikely.
Mm,
I mean, Europe, 100 million is very unlikely. South America, I don't even think 35, 40 million is a big ask. Big
yeah,
ask. I mean, City
yeah,
signed Julian Alvarez, I think, for 18 million, or
yeah,
which is nothing.
yeah.
18 or 12 some million, which is
Correct.
absolutely nothing. So I
Yeah.
don't see a player. I might feel a player of maybe if you want to see Alfonso Davies, if he wants to leave
Mm,
Bayern, but breaking the transfer record would be very, very
mm.
hard.
Big
I
one.
think he might
Yeah.
break the 100 million barrier if he has a very good few years at Bayern.
Correct.
But to break the I mean,
Yeah.
that was 222 million. I don't know the equivalent in dollars,
Mm,
in pounds, sorry. But it's definitely more than 150,
yeah.
160 million.
Also, I think the players that you mentioned have come up from the academies for all the clubs, and so there is an inherent resistance for them to
To leave, to
leave.
leave, precisely. And I
Yeah.
think a player like Mason Mount, who has already won the Champions League, and now if
Mm-hmm.
he wants to win all the other trophies, he would
Mm.
rather stay at Chelsea and give himself the best chance than leave and
Correct.
fit into a different club. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. Yeah.
it's only when you achieve everything here, you would want to
Hmm.
see your options abroad. And I don't,
Correct.
and if he idolizes players like John Terry and Frank Lampard, I don't think he will leave. I would not
Yeah.
want him to leave. I would
Right.
like,
Absolutely.
if it's in my hands, I will like literally make sure that he doesn't leave. I'll hug his car
Right.
and make sure he doesn't go anywhere. I'm
Yeah.
that serious.
Yeah.
I don't
Absolutely.
understand a section of our fan base who don't like him, but I mean I think that's a
Hmm.
discussion probably with a
For
Chelsea
another time.
fan for a Chelsea perspective. Uh,
Correct. Yeah. Fair.
right, so we're coming to the closure of the episode. Just one
Hmm.
final question to you
Yes,
is
sir.
what is your future game? I mean CA, ACCA, MBA in sports business management, a passion for
Mhm.
sports. You,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I forgot to mention you also have a football academy here in Pune.
Yeah.
All of these
Uh,
things you have.
mhm.
What's the
That's a question. To be fair, I ran the academy for a couple of months because of my love for the sport.
okay?
It's not currently active, but
Okay,
you know what? Maybe some time down the line, I'd want to create a bigger spectrum for young talent to sort of
right, right,
become recruiting and have a tie up with somebody. But that would be for probably when I have some sort of a understanding of where I am and as well.
right.
So I have a startup back home which we are working on. It's very much in its adolescence, still a long way to go, but we're working on that. It's in the sports tech industry as well. Currently, I'm working with a company out of London which does work for uh, companies and banks who lend money to football clubs.
Okay,
So, I mean, that's a very brief way of putting it forward, but they're sort of like an intermediary, if you will.
okay,
And I'm really enjoying working with them. I'm getting great insights. I love, getting to know how the system works, so on and so forth. I'm still very much at the outside of it because it's a part-time job. I'm trying to accommodate it with my university work,
right,
but it's
right,
still a lot of fun, and so over here there are a lot of options to, I don't want to restrict myself to football, but obviously because of the passion for the game, I'd obviously want to work with football clubs. There are entities which, back in India we're not aware of, but there are so many entities that do work for football clubs without
right,
being part of football club, running sports analytics, doing project forecasting, for example, the KPMGs, the Deloittes,
right, right,
all of these companies. Like you mentioned, Southampton's takeover. The company that's doing that is called Sports Republic.
right, right,
There are companies who are doing such stuff, observing and recruiting, taking takeovers and handling recruitment decisions, etc. So the sports scene here is amazing. It just I'm still not 100% sure about the scale of it. But it's
right.
mammoth. I know that. Over here, university sport is a big thing as well. And so there are so many avenues to explore. And so this time from now up till the end of my course is just going to go in understanding
Right.
what the sports circuit looks like, not restricting myself that I only want to enter this industry, because there are so many bigger industries that have an equal amount of impact. There are government institutes who, because of them indirectly football clubs are able to run the way they do.
Precisely.
Stuff like running grassroots academies, or just having different areas that the entity has bought where people can go and play and train, and they can have facilities. All of this stuff, the industry is so much deeper than just football clubs. They're a
Precisely.
part of it. They're the final product that we see,
Right,
but
right,
a lot goes into getting there. And
right,
so that's sort of my outlook towards understanding the sports scene, getting to know how things work, understanding where my passion lies, because it's you can't just sustain your career by saying I love football so I'll work here, but you have to
precisely.
like the work, you have to feel love for the work.
Yeah.
I can't say, oh, I love Apple and work as an engineer there, but I don't love the
Love the
job
work
of
that
being
you do.
an
Right,
engineer.
right,
So it can, the motivation of working for an entity can only be till the novelty of you entering and getting to know the entity
right,
lies.
right,
After that, your passion for the why is important. Why I'm
right,
doing this job is how I'm making an impact.
right,
So
right,
the next couple of months is just an understanding the why of it,
right.
you know. But yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely loving what I'm doing. I'm enjoying every minute of it, learning new things, doing new things. Like, this was something that we were talking about for a long time, and I was
Right,
looking
right.
forward to it. And so then now today when I sit for dinner, I'm like, this was a fun thing I did today. An enjoyable thing that I would normally not get to do if I had not taken this decision of, going down this path after chartered
Right,
accountants.
right, right, right.
It's exciting times. It's daunting times, but it's exciting times.
Right, right.
Yeah.
You turned a bit philosophical there. You became a
I did.
you became more of a career counselor when I felt like a kid who was just cleared my 12th or cleared my graduation and I'm here ki, sir, now what do I do?
Would
Where I felt that for a
Wrong
minute
person to
also.
ask.
I felt that for a minute. I forgot for a minute I was doing C. I felt for a minute like let's go down this sports route as well. Nah, but
Love
but
it.
whatever you're doing is fantastic, and I mean I've seen your I mean I only followed you on Twitter and on LinkedIn. I see your
Right.
threads. I never really felt that you would. I mean this is something that you would end up doing, and I felt that since you were doing CA and all, I felt you would take that
Yeah.
route, and this would just be one thing you did on the
Right.
weekends or did
Right.
as a side thing. I'm
Oh,
very
yeah.
happy to see you doing this, and I wish you nothing but best of luck and all the success. And I hope that one day, when I say this to all my guests who are doing something very amazing in the
Mm.
field of sports, I'll say that one day when I'll see your poster somewhere on a billboard or on a newspaper or somewhere where
Oh,
I'll see
yeah.
it, I can link people to this episode that we've had. That initially this is where he started, and now look at where he is. I said this to a friend of
Oh,
mine who was a data scientist who
mhm.
was working as a science
Right.
student, came on the pod.
Right.
Now I can say that for you, who you're in the sports business management side of things. So
Yeah.
I'm very, very happy that you're doing this, and I feel like the very fact that this episode has gone for close to 90 minutes, it's the longest
Mhm.
episode, and I can safely say it's an episode where I would have to do the least editing. It's the least editing. And for you to say this is something that you're doing for the first time, it doesn't look like it. Let me tell you that. I've had
Oh, I'm
people on, and I've heard people who are seasoned guests on episodes, and they stammer and they are not confident in what you're saying, and your
right.
delivery, and I mean the passion is visible. Yeah, if you're passionate
Yeah.
about something, it comes out. You don't need to put on a
Yeah.
show, and I'm very
Yeah.
happy for
Right.
you, and I wish you all the best. And I'm very
Thank you so
happy
much.
that you took the time out today and came on this episode. I mean, we were discussing since 2020, and finally it's 2022 when we
Yeah.
finally are on an episode.
We are all,
So,
yeah. No, yeah. But listen, that's really nice of you, and I think the credit comes down to the fact that because the thing is, like, we can now say that we've only by far exchanged texts after we talked.
right,
So this is the first time we're actually sitting across each other and having a conversation.
right,
So it kind of comes down to how comfortable you can make me and how much you are willing to give me the freedom to talk and take me in a direction to actually, make me realize that it's just a conversation.
right.
It's just being recorded is a part of it, but it's just a
Precisely,
conversation we're
precisely.
having and exchanging ideas. And so, yeah, when you point to that poster, I'd say, that guy who replaced Joe Rogan, I did a podcast with
Oh
him.
my God. To
So
replace
yeah,
Joe
yeah,
Rogan, oh my God. That is
yeah,
that is a that
let's,
is a
let's dream
and it
big.
and it,
Let's
it's
dream.
not helpful for me that his surname and my name rhyme. So it's a bit of a
It's written.
oh
It's written. It's written.
this I'm doing this
Yeah,
I'm doing
for
this.
each other, for each other. Yeah, for each other.
Right. With
Yeah.
that, we have come to the end of an episode. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time out and being here. And I hope to see you soon. And I hope that one day we can have this conversation not virtually but in person, where we will record
Absolutely.
another
This year.
another episode of all of your events that you've embarked on this journey of wherever it
Absolutely.
takes you.
Absolutely.
Right. With that, we have reached the conclusion of this episode. If you've made it so far, thank you so much, and please do consider subscribing. I mean, the aim of this podcast is not to just be another reactionary podcast. We bring out more and more insights, and we have conversations with lots and lots of people to bring out their unique perspective to the sport that we all love. All the socials of Abhishek will be in this description. His Instagram, his Twitter. I will also link his LinkedIn because he posts a lot of fantastic stuff there as well. And yeah, so all my socials would also be there. All of Sid's social, who's my co-host and unfortunately not here with us today because of his preparations for another exam. He's also not here, but his social will also be there. Like always, like every episode, Sid. We miss you and we hope that you come back very, very soon. I have been your host, Rohan. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. Goodbye, stay safe, and mask up. Thank you.